The shuttle landed with a soft thud on the red sand of Zerion 7. Marcus Chen stepped out first, his boots sinking slightly into the loose ground. The hot air hit his face like opening an oven door. He pulled down his protective goggles and looked around at the endless desert that stretched to the horizon. Temperature readings show 45 degrees in the shade, announced Dr. Ness, the insectoid scientist from the Klaxi species. Her 4 arms moved quickly over her scanning device while her large compound eyes reflected the harsh sunlight. Humidity is almost 0. Wind speed is currently calm, but atmospheric pressure shows possible instability. Commander Zethkar emerged from the shuttle next. The tall, crystalline being from the Vorthak species stood nearly 8 feet high. His translucent blue skin caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the sand. "The mission parameters are clear," he said in his precise voice. 2 weeks of geological survey. We establish base camp, collect samples, and map the mineral deposits. The mining consortium needs complete data before they invest in extraction operations. Engineer Torvak was the last to exit, his heavy metal boots making deep prints in the sand. The stone-hide species member stood almost as wide as he was tall. His natural rock-like armor plates covered his body, and his small eyes looked out from a face that seemed carved from granite. "This place looks dead," he grumbled. "No water, no plants, no life. Just rocks and sand. Should be easy work." Marcus pulled out his old tablet computer and checked the geological surveys. "The mineral deposits are deep," he said. "We'll need to set up a proper base camp. This planet has some interesting weather patterns. Temperature swings of 60 degrees between day and night. And, according to the historical data, it gets some pretty serious sandstorms." "Historical data from where?" asked Zethkar. "This planet has never been properly surveyed before." "Long-range orbital scans," Marcus replied. "They show atmospheric disturbance patterns, storm tracks, electromagnetic activity during weather events, the kind of stuff that can mess with equipment." Dr. Neese clicked her mandibles together, a sound that meant amusement in her species. "Marcus, your species worries about everything. We have the most advanced shelter technology in the known galaxy. A little wind and sand cannot harm us." The team began unloading their equipment. Marcus watched as his 3 companions set up their impressive shelters. Commander Zethkar activated a cylindrical device about the size of a trash can. Blue energy flowed out of it and formed a perfect dome 20 feet across. The energy barrier shimmered and hummed softly. Inside, the temperature immediately dropped to a comfortable 20 degrees. "Vorthak energy shield technology," Zethkar explained proudly. "It can stop projectiles, filter air, and maintain perfect climate control. The power core will run for months without recharging." Dr. Nis planted what looked like a large seed in the sand. Within minutes, it sprouted into a complex organic structure. The walls were thick and green, with breathing pores that opened and closed like tiny mouths. "Bioadaptive shelter," she said. "It grows to fit my needs. If the temperature changes, it adapts. If the air becomes toxic, it filters automatically. If I need more space, it grows larger. Living architecture is far superior to static buildings." Engineer Torvak deployed his shelter last. It was a massive metal structure that unfolded like origami from a small box. Within an hour, he had a fortress of thick steel plates with multiple air filters and defensive positions. "Stonehide military engineering," he announced. "This shelter could survive a meteor impact. The walls are 3 feet thick. The air filtration system can handle any known toxic atmosphere." Marcus looked at these impressive displays of technology and nodded approvingly. "Those are really something," he said. "Very advanced, very comfortable." "What about you, Marcus?" asked Dr. Neese. "Where is your human shelter technology?" Marcus pointed to a spot about 100 meters away from the others. "I'm going to dig." The 3 aliens looked at each other. Zethkar's crystal skin flickered with colors that meant confusion. "Dig? As in, make a hole in the ground?" "More like an underground room," Marcus explained. "Actually, probably several rooms, with good ventilation, water storage, emergency supplies, backup power, manual controls, and multiple escape routes." Torvak laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "You want to live in a hole like some primitive animal? My fortress is right here, above ground, where I can see everything." "The human approach seems unnecessarily difficult," said Zethkar. "Why dig when you can simply project an energy barrier?" My shield requires no physical materials and can be adjusted instantly. Dr. Nice tilted her insectoid head. And why build something that cannot change? If conditions alter, can your hull adapt? My bioshelter evolves as needed. Marcus started unpacking his equipment. It looked ancient compared to their technology. Hand tools, a small mechanical digger, some basic electronics, and bags of cement mix. Well, different species, different approaches, he said. You folks build what works for you. I'll build what works for me. Over the next few hours, Marcus began his work. He carefully chose his location, checking soil composition and drainage. He measured distances and angles. He tested the ground with instruments that looked like they belonged in a museum compared to his companions' advanced scanners. The aliens watched with growing amusement as Marcus started digging a rectangular pit. His work was slow and methodical. Every shovelful was placed carefully. He stopped frequently to check measurements and make notes in an old paper notebook. "This is painful to watch," muttered Torvak. "I built my entire fortress in the time it took him to dig that tiny hole." "Humans are known for their stubborn attachment to primitive methods," observed Zethkar. "Perhaps it is psychological comfort. Their species evolved in caves, after all." Dr. Nice studied Marcus with scientific interest. His approach lacks efficiency, no adaptation capability, no advanced materials. It is curious that his species achieved space travel with such backward thinking. As the day grew hotter, Marcus continued his digging. The aliens retreated to their comfortable, climate-controlled shelters. Through their transparent walls, they could see the human working under the blazing sun, slowly carving out what looked like the foundation for something much larger than they had expected. Marcus paused in his work and looked up at the sky. The sun was bright, but there were thin clouds on the horizon. He pulled out his tablet and checked atmospheric readings. The electromagnetic activity was higher than normal. Pressure variations suggested possible weather changes. He looked over at his teammates' impressive shelters, then back at his hole in the ground. In 2 weeks, they would all return to their ships with rock samples and survey data. Until then, they would each sleep in the shelter they trusted most. Marcus picked up his shovel and kept digging. 3 days passed on Zerion 7, and the differences between the shelters became more obvious. Each morning, Marcus crawled out of his growing underground bunker covered in dust and sweat. Meanwhile, his 3 companions stepped out of their pristine, comfortable homes looking fresh and clean. Commander Zethkar's energy dome maintained a perfect environment. The air inside stayed cool and clean, while outside temperatures climbed past 50 degrees. His crystalline skin had grown brighter and more colorful, a sign of good health in the Vorthak species. "Another pleasant night," he announced each morning. The energy barrier filtered out all dust particles and maintained optimal humidity levels. Dr. Nice emerged from her bioshelter looking equally comfortable. The living walls had grown thicker during the hot days and developed better air circulation pores. "My shelter adapted beautifully to the temperature changes," she said, clicking her mandibles with satisfaction. "It even grew me fresh fruit for breakfast. Living architecture truly is superior to static construction." Engineer Torvak spent his mornings on top of his metal fortress, scanning the horizon with military precision. His thick armor plates showed no signs of discomfort from the heat. "Perfect defensive position," he declared. "Clear sight lines in all directions. The air filtration system kept everything clean. No sand particles detected inside." Marcus climbed out of his hole and brushed sand from his clothes. His underground work was expanding daily. What had started as a simple pit now reached 6 feet deep and 12 feet square. Support beams made from local materials held up the walls. He had installed a hand-operated air pump and was working on what looked like a drainage system. "Marcus," called Zethkar during their morning team meeting, "your construction methods seem unnecessarily labor-intensive. Why not use modern technology to assist you?" Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and accepted a cup of coffee from Dr. Nice's bioshelter, which had somehow learned to produce earth beverages. "I appreciate the offer," he said, "but I want to build something that doesn't depend on power sources or complex systems, something that works even when everything else fails." Torvak laughed his grinding stone laugh. "Fails? My fortress is built to Stonehide military specifications. It could survive a direct missile attack. What could possibly make it fail?" "Probably nothing," Marcus agreed. Your engineering is impressive. All your shelters are amazing. Much more comfortable than my hole in the ground. Then why continue with such primitive methods? Asked Dr. Neese. Our shelters provide superior protection, comfort, and efficiency. Your approach seems to ignore thousands of years of technological advancement. Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed them his work schedule. I'm building multiple backup systems, manual ventilation in case power fails, water storage in case the recycling systems break, food storage in case supply drops are delayed, emergency exits in case the main entrance gets blocked, communication equipment that doesn't rely on satellite networks. Zethkar's crystal skin shifted to patterns that indicated polite confusion. But why prepare for so many unlikely scenarios? My energy barrier has never failed. The technology is proven across hundreds of worlds. Humans have this saying, Marcus explained. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. My species has survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, and solar flares. We learned to plan for things that probably won't happen, but could kill you if they do. That sounds like a very stressful way to live, observed Dr. Neese. Always expecting disaster, my people believe in adaptation when problems arise, not building defenses against imaginary threats. The threats aren't imaginary, Marcus said, checking his atmospheric readings. They're just unlikely. But when you're dealing with life and death, unlikely isn't the same as impossible. As the days continued, the contrast between the shelters became a source of entertainment for the aliens. They would gather in the evenings to share meals and discuss their survey findings. Marcus would join them after long days of construction work, usually dirty and tired. How many backup systems does one human need? Torvak asked on the 5th day. Marcus had spent the afternoon installing what appeared to be a manual water pump connected to a deep well. You have backup ventilation, backup power, backup communications, backup food storage. Do you have backup backups? Actually, yes, Marcus replied seriously. The pump has a manual and an automated system. The ventilation has 3 different air intake points. The power system can run on solar, battery, or hand crank. The communication equipment includes radio, satellite, and emergency beacon. Zethkar shook his crystalline head. This level of redundancy seems paranoid. What are the chances that every system would fail simultaneously? Small, Marcus admitted, but not zero. And when you're stuck on an alien planet, small chances can become big problems very quickly. Dr. Neese studied Marcus with her large compound eyes. Is this typical of human psychology? This constant preparation for unlikely disasters? Pretty much, Marcus said. We call it Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, usually at the worst possible time. How pessimistic, clicked Dr. Ness. My species prefers optimistic adaptation. We build shelters that grow stronger when challenged, not shelters that hide from challenges. Different approaches, Marcus agreed. He looked at his tablet and frowned slightly. The electromagnetic readings are getting interesting, higher than normal activity in the upper atmosphere, pressure variations too. My sensors show normal parameters, said Zethkar. Mine as well, added Torvak. All systems green. Dr. Neese consulted her bioshelter's living sensors. The organic monitors detect no immediate threats. Perhaps your equipment needs calibration. Marcus double-checked his readings. The electromagnetic activity was definitely increasing. The atmospheric pressure showed unusual patterns. His weather analysis software was flagging potential storm conditions, though nothing appeared on the short-range forecasts. Maybe, he said, but I think I'll keep building anyway. By the end of the first week, Marcus's shelter had become an impressive underground complex, multiple rooms connected by reinforced tunnels, air shafts with manual and automatic ventilation, water storage tanks fed by a deep well, food supplies for several weeks, emergency medical supplies, communication equipment with external antennas, multiple escape routes leading to different surface exits. The aliens found his project fascinating in an academic way, like watching a primitive tribe build tools from stone and wood. You have essentially built an entire underground city, observed Zethkar. The engineering is crude but comprehensive, though I question why anyone would choose to live like a burrowing animal when comfortable alternatives exist. It's not about comfort, Marcus explained, sealing another air duct. It's about survival. Sometimes the best technology is the technology that keeps working when everything else stops. Above ground, thin clouds gathered on the horizon. Marcus's instruments detected growing electromagnetic disturbances. His weather analysis programs began issuing warnings for severe atmospheric conditions. The aliens noticed none of these changes. Their advanced sensors were calibrated for normal conditions and ignored what seemed like minor variations in planetary atmospheric patterns. Marcus looked at the darkening sky and kept building. The second week on Zerion 7 began with strange changes that only Marcus seemed to notice. The morning sky had an odd color, more orange than the usual pale blue. The wind patterns had shifted from the steady westerly flow they had experienced all week. Most concerning, his electromagnetic sensors were detecting unusual activity in the planet's magnetic field. Marcus emerged from his underground shelter and checked his instruments again. The readings were consistent. Electromagnetic disturbances were increasing. Atmospheric pressure showed irregular fluctuations. His weather analysis program was now predicting a 70% chance of severe weather within the next 48 hours. He walked over to where his teammates were starting their daily survey work. Commander Zethkar was calibrating his crystal-powered scanners inside his energy dome. Dr. Nice was collecting soil samples with tools that her bioshelter had grown overnight. Engineer Torvak was setting up drilling equipment to reach deeper mineral deposits. "I'm getting some unusual readings," Marcus announced. "I think we might have serious weather coming in, maybe even a major storm system." Zethkar looked up from his equipment. His crystal skin showed patterns of mild annoyance. "My sensors detect no weather anomalies. Atmospheric pressure is within normal ranges. Wind speed is acceptable. Temperature variation is expected for this planet." "What exactly are you seeing?" asked Dr. Nice, her mandibles clicking with scientific interest. Marcus showed them his tablet displays. "Electromagnetic activity is up 30% from baseline. The planetary magnetic field is fluctuating in patterns that match pre-storm conditions. Atmospheric pressure is dropping faster than normal weather changes. The wind direction has shifted twice in the last 6 hours." Torvak glanced at the sky and shrugged his massive shoulders. "Looks normal to me. Maybe some clouds, but nothing threatening. My fortress could handle anything this planet throws at it anyway." "The electromagnetic readings concern me," Marcus continued. "If there's a major storm with electromagnetic pulse activity, it could disrupt electronic systems. Power sources might fail. Communication equipment could go offline." "Human paranoia again," said Zethkar dismissively. "My energy shield generators are hardened against electromagnetic interference. Vorthak technology is not so easily disrupted." Dr. Nice examined her bioshelter's living sensors. "My organic systems show no stress indicators. If dangerous weather approached, the bioshelter would adapt automatically. Living organisms are far more sensitive to environmental changes than mechanical instruments." "My equipment is military grade," added Torvak, "built to operate in combat zones with heavy electromagnetic warfare. A little static in the atmosphere won't affect Stonehide engineering." Marcus tried a different approach. "Even if your systems can handle the electromagnetic effects, what about sand infiltration, wind speeds, temperature drops? This planet's storms can be pretty intense according to the orbital survey data." "Sand cannot penetrate my energy barrier," stated Zethkar. "The field blocks all particles regardless of size." "My bioshelter seals automatically," said Dr. Nias. "The living walls can close all pores and create an airtight environment. Temperature regulation is automatic." "My fortress has military-grade air filtration," declared Torvak. "Sand, dust, even chemical weapons cannot penetrate the defense systems." Marcus looked at each of his companions' shelters. They were undeniably impressive pieces of technology. His own underground bunker looked primitive by comparison. "I hope you're right," he said. "But if conditions get really bad, you're all welcome to share my shelter. It has room for everyone." The aliens exchanged glances that Marcus couldn't quite interpret. Zethkar's crystal skin flickered with colors that suggested polite amusement. "That is generous of you, Marcus. But I believe we will be quite comfortable in our own accommodations." "Your hole in the ground is certainly extensive," said Dr. Nice diplomatically. "But our technology is specifically designed for hostile environments. We appreciate the offer, but it won't be necessary." Torvak laughed his grinding stone laugh. "No offense, human, but I'll trust Stonehide military engineering over a cave any day. Your bunker might be good enough for humans, but we have higher standards." Marcus spent the rest of the day making final preparations. He checked all his backup systems twice. The manual ventilation worked perfectly. Water storage was full. Emergency supplies were secured. The communication equipment included several different technologies that operated on different frequencies and power sources. As afternoon turned to evening, the changes became more obvious. The wind was now gusting unpredictably, sometimes calm, sometimes strong enough to blow sand into small dust devils. The sky had taken on a sickly yellow-brown color. Lightning flickered in distant clouds, though no thunder could be heard yet. Marcus's instruments were now showing critical readings. Electromagnetic activity was approaching dangerous levels. Atmospheric pressure was dropping rapidly. His weather analysis program upgraded the storm prediction to 95% certainty within the next 12 hours. He visited each of his teammates' shelters personally. "The storm is definitely coming," he told Zethkar. "My latest readings show it could be a Class 4 or even Class 5 electromagnetic storm. Wind speeds might exceed 200 kilometers per hour. The electromagnetic pulse could be severe enough to overload electronic systems." Zethkar was inside his energy dome, comfortable and relaxed. "Marcus, you worry too much. Even if there is a storm, my technology has protected Vorthak expeditions on hundreds of hostile worlds. A little wind and sand cannot threaten a properly maintained energy barrier." At Dr. Nice's bioshelter, Marcus found the scientists preparing specimens for analysis. "The electromagnetic readings are now critical," he warned. "If your bioshelter depends on any electronic systems for life support, they might fail. Also, the sand in this storm could be different from normal sand. Finer particles, more abrasive, possibly charged with static electricity." Dr. Nice clicked her mandibles dismissively. "My shelter is a living organism, not a machine. It doesn't depend on electronics. It adapts biologically to whatever conditions arise. Static electricity and fine sand are simply environmental challenges that will trigger automatic evolutionary responses." Torvak was the most dismissive of Marcus's warnings. The Stonehide engineer was performing maintenance on his drilling equipment outside his metal fortress. "You humans see danger everywhere," he said without looking up from his work. "This fortress has survived combat zones, asteroid impacts, and plasma bombardments. Some wind and sand are not going to hurt it." Marcus tried one more time. "The storm might last 18 to 24 hours. It could include temperature drops of 50 degrees or more. Electromagnetic pulses strong enough to damage unshielded electronics. Wind speeds that can turn sand into a cutting weapon. Please consider sharing my shelter. It's designed for exactly this kind of extreme weather." "Your concern is noted," said Torvak formally. But Stonehide military doctrine does not retreat to caves when superior defensive positions are available. Marcus returned to his underground bunker as full darkness fell. The wind was now howling across the desert surface. Lightning was becoming more frequent, and the first drops of sand were beginning to fall like rain. His instruments showed the storm front approaching rapidly. He sealed his shelter's main entrance and activated all backup systems. The manual ventilation was running smoothly. Emergency lighting cast a warm glow through the underground rooms. Water pumps were cycling properly. Communication equipment was switched to the most robust emergency frequencies. Above ground, the 3 alien shelters stood confidently against the approaching storm. Energy barriers hummed with power. Bioadaptive walls shifted and prepared. Metal fortresses locked down their defensive systems. Marcus checked his instruments one final time. The electromagnetic storm was now classified as Category 5, the most severe rating on the scale. Wind speeds were predicted to exceed 250 kilometers per hour. The electromagnetic pulse effects would be strong enough to damage even hardened electronics. He tried his radio one last time. "This is Marcus to all team members. Major electromagnetic storm approaching within the next 2 hours. Category 5 rating. All personnel should take shelter in the most protected location available. My bunker has room for everyone if needed." 3 voices replied with confident dismissals. They were prepared. Their technology was superior. The human was worrying unnecessarily again. Marcus sealed the radio system in its electromagnetic shielding and settled down to wait. Outside, the wind began to scream. The storm hit Zerion 7 like a hammer blow from an angry god. Marcus felt it first as vibrations through the ground, transmitted down through 6 feet of solid rock and sand into his underground bunker. The manual seismic sensors he had installed began registering shockwaves from the wind impacts above. Within minutes, the readings showed surface wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Then came the electromagnetic pulse. The first wave hit like invisible lightning, powerful enough to make Marcus's hair stand on end, even deep underground. His shielded communication equipment detected the pulse and automatically switched to emergency power mode. The electromagnetic intensity was off the scale, stronger than anything in the planetary database. Above ground, the storm unleashed its full fury. Commander Zethkar was the first to realize something was wrong. The blue energy dome that had protected him for over a week began to flicker. The steady hum of the power generators became irregular, interrupted by stuttering pauses as electromagnetic interference overwhelmed the control systems. "Warning," announced his shelter's computer in a voice distorted by static. "Power fluctuations detected. Electromagnetic interference exceeding normal parameters. Attempting compensation." Zethkar rushed to his control panel, his crystalline skin shifting to patterns of alarm. The energy readings were chaotic. Each electromagnetic pulse from the storm overloaded different circuits. The backup systems engaged, then failed as the next pulse arrived. Within 10 minutes of the storm's arrival, his energy barrier collapsed completely. Sand-filled wind immediately invaded his shelter. The fine particles penetrated every surface, clogging air filters and coating his sensitive equipment. The temperature inside began dropping rapidly as the climate control systems failed. Within an hour, Zethkar was shivering in a shelter that had become a sand-filled freezer. Dr. Niss's bioshelter faced different problems. The living walls tried desperately to adapt to the rapidly changing conditions, but evolution could not keep pace with the storm's violence. The organic systems that had seemed so sophisticated began failing one by one. The bioshelter tried to seal against the sand infiltration, but the particles were too fine and too abundant. They penetrated the breathing pores faster than the living tissue could close them. The internal atmosphere became thick with dust that the biological filters could not process. Worse, the electromagnetic pulses were disrupting the shelter's nervous system. The bioadaptive responses became confused and contradictory. Walls that should have been sealing instead opened wider. Temperature regulation systems overheated, trying to compensate for the environmental chaos. The living architecture began showing signs of system shock. Dr. Niss found herself trapped inside a dying organism that was slowly suffocating on sand and electromagnetic interference. Engineer Torvak's fortress seemed to handle the initial assault better. The thick metal walls blocked the wind and sand effectively. The electromagnetic pulses caused some equipment failures, but the military-grade systems had built-in hardening that provided basic protection. But as the hours passed, problems accumulated. The air filtration systems, designed for combat chemicals rather than ultrafine sand particles, began clogging. The electromagnetic interference was constant now, not occasional pulses, and it slowly degraded the electronic control systems. Most critically, Torvak had not planned for the combination of effects. His fortress could handle electromagnetic warfare. It could handle sandstorms. But it was not designed for both simultaneously, sustained over many hours. The backup systems that should have compensated for primary failures were themselves being disabled by electromagnetic interference. By the storm's 4th hour, all 3 alien shelters were in serious trouble. Marcus monitored the situation through his shielded instruments. His underground bunker remained stable and comfortable. The manual ventilation system continued working perfectly, unaffected by electromagnetic interference. The temperature stayed constant. The air remained clean and breathable. His communication equipment, protected in electromagnetic shielding, still functioned on emergency frequencies. He tried repeatedly to contact his teammates, but received only static in return. Either their communication systems had failed, or they were unable to reach their equipment. During a brief lull in the storm's intensity, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone watching from orbit. He put on his protective gear, grabbed emergency supplies, and opened the bunker's main entrance. The surface of Zerion 7 had become an alien hell. Wind screamed across the landscape, carrying sand so thick it was like a brown fog. Lightning flickered constantly through the dust clouds, creating an eerie, strobing illumination. The temperature had dropped nearly 60 degrees from the afternoon high. Marcus activated his emergency beacon and followed its guidance toward Zethkar's position. The energy dome was completely gone. In its place, he found the Vorthak commander huddled against his failed equipment, covered in sand and shivering uncontrollably. "Zethkar," Marcus shouted over the wind. "We need to get you to my shelter." The crystalline being was too cold and shocked to argue. Marcus helped him to his feet and guided him through the screaming wind toward the bunker entrance. It took 20 minutes to cover 100 meters, but Marcus's navigation equipment worked perfectly despite the electromagnetic chaos. Once Zethkar was safely underground, Marcus returned to the surface for Dr. Neese. He found the Klaxi scientist in even worse condition. Her bioshelter had partially collapsed, its living walls dying from electromagnetic shock and sand infiltration. Dr. Neese was barely conscious, her respiratory system clogged with dust particles. Marcus carried her through the storm to his bunker, where the clean air and stable environment immediately began helping her recover. Torvak was the most difficult rescue. The Stonehide engineer was still inside his fortress, which remained structurally intact but was slowly filling with sand as the air filtration systems failed. Torvak was conscious but weakening as the air quality deteriorated. Marcus had to use emergency cutting tools to create an exit route through the fortress's thick walls. Even with his protective gear, the work was exhausting in the storm conditions. By the time he got Torvak back to the bunker, both of them were near collapse. Inside Marcus's underground shelter, the three aliens slowly recovered from their ordeal. The bunker's multiple rooms easily accommodated everyone. The manual life support systems provided clean air and comfortable temperatures. Emergency food and water supplies were more than adequate for the group. "How long will the storm last?" asked Zethkar, his crystal skin slowly returning to normal colors as he warmed up. Marcus checked his weather monitoring equipment. "The worst of it should pass in about 12 more hours, but we might have residual electromagnetic effects for another day after that." Dr. Nis was using one of the bunker's medical stations to clear sand from her respiratory system. "Your equipment still functions, even with the electromagnetic interference. Most of it is manually operated or electromagnetically shielded," Marcus explained. "The few electronic systems I have are in Faraday cages. Basic physics. If you can't prevent the electromagnetic pulse, you can at least contain its effects." Torvak sat heavily on one of the bunker's built-in benches. His rock-like armor plates were still covered with fine sand. "Your shelter is adequate," he admitted grudgingly. "More than adequate. It works when everything else fails." Outside, the storm continued its assault on the empty surface of Zerion 7. Wind speeds peaked at over 300 kilometers per hour. Electromagnetic pulses strong enough to disable unshielded electronics struck every few seconds. The temperature dropped to levels that would have been fatal to any of the team members caught on the surface. But inside, Marcus's primitive underground bunker, 4 beings from different worlds sat in safety and comfort, breathing clean air and drinking fresh water, while one of the most violent storms in the planet's recorded history raged overhead. The humans had been right about one thing, the aliens realized. Sometimes the most advanced technology was simply the technology that kept working when everything else stopped. 22 hours after it began, the great storm of Zerion 7 finally passed. Marcus was the first to know, watching his instruments as electromagnetic activity dropped to normal levels and surface wind speeds fell below dangerous thresholds. The atmospheric pressure was stabilizing, and his weather analysis programs showed clear skies approaching from the west. "It's over," he announced to his 3 companions, who had spent the night in the bunker's secondary sleeping chambers. "Surface conditions are returning to normal. We can go up and assess the damage." The 4 of them emerged from the underground shelter into a world transformed. The desert landscape had been completely reshaped by the storm. Sand dunes had moved hundreds of meters. Rock formations had been scoured clean by the wind-driven particles. The very color of the ground had changed as different mineral layers were exposed. Where the 3 advanced shelters had stood, only destruction remained. Commander Zethkar's energy dome was completely gone. The power generators lay half buried in sand, their crystal cores cracked by electromagnetic overload. Electronic components were scattered across the desert, some fused into glass by electrical surges. Nothing remained of the comfortable, climate-controlled environment that had seemed so superior just 2 days earlier. Total system failure, Zethkar said quietly, his crystal skin showing patterns of deep contemplation. Every backup system, every redundancy, every safeguard, all useless against conditions we did not anticipate. Dr. Niss's bioshelter was perhaps the most disturbing sight. The living walls had not simply died. They had mutated under the electromagnetic stress. Twisted organic growths protruded at unnatural angles. The breathing pores had grown into gaping wounds that would never heal. The once beautiful example of biological architecture had become something alien and diseased. Evolution requires time, Dr. Niss observed, her mandibles clicking with scientific detachment. Rapid environmental change can cause biological systems to fail catastrophically. My shelter tried to adapt to conditions that killed it faster than it could evolve. Torvak's metal fortress still stood, but barely. The structure was intact, but the interior was completely filled with sand so fine it had penetrated every seal and filter. The electromagnetic interference had fused most of the electronic systems into useless scrap. The air filtration equipment was clogged beyond repair. Military engineering failed, Torvak admitted, his voice carrying tones of professional respect. My fortress was designed for known threats. It could not handle the unknown. Your bunker was designed for the impossible. Marcus surveyed the destruction with genuine sadness. I'm sorry about your shelters. They really were impressive pieces of technology. Under normal conditions, they would have been perfect. But these were not normal conditions, said Zethkar. And that is something we did not consider. We built for efficiency and comfort, not for survival against the impossible. As they salvaged what they could from the wreckage, the conversations revealed how fundamentally the storm had changed the aliens' perspective on human technology and thinking. Your species approaches engineering differently than ours, observed Dr. Ness as she helped Marcus organize the undamaged equipment. We build systems that adapt to change. You build systems that survive change. Both have merit, but yours proved more reliable when adaptation was impossible. Marcus was checking his communication equipment, pleased to find it still functional despite the electromagnetic assault. Humans have been through a lot of disasters: ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, solar flares. We learned that the universe doesn't care about your survival. It will throw things at you that you never imagined. So we try to prepare for everything, even the things that seem impossible. Zethkar was examining the entrance to Marcus's bunker with new appreciation. You built multiple escape routes. Why? The main entrance was perfectly adequate under normal conditions. Because normal conditions don't last, Marcus replied. Maybe the main entrance gets blocked by rockfall. Maybe floodwaters trap you inside. Maybe hostile forces control the surface above your primary exit. In an emergency, having only one way out means having no way out. Torvak was studying the bunker's manual ventilation system. These mechanical pumps require no power source. They function even when all electronics fail, but they are inefficient compared to powered systems. Inefficient? Yes, Marcus agreed. But they work. When you're suffocating, inefficient air circulation is better than no air circulation. When your life depends on something working, simple and reliable beats complex and efficient. As they continued their survey work over the following days, using equipment borrowed from Marcus's extensive backup supplies, the aliens began to understand the philosophy behind human engineering. You anticipate failure, said Dr. Niss on the third day after the storm. Every system you build assumes that other systems will break. This seems pessimistic, but it proved to be wisdom. We call it Murphy's Law, Marcus explained. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, usually at the worst possible time. So you plan for it. You build backups for your backups. You assume that your best technology will fail when you need it most. Zethkar had been particularly affected by the experience. My people value efficiency and elegance in our technology. We build systems that work perfectly under optimal conditions, but we do not plan for suboptimal conditions because we believe our technology can control the environment. Sometimes it can, Marcus said. Your energy barriers are amazing. Under most conditions, they would be far superior to anything I could build. But when they fail completely. When my systems fail, other systems take over. The rescue shuttle arrived on schedule, finding 4 beings with a completely different dynamic than the team that had landed 2 weeks earlier. Marcus was no longer the primitive human with the backwards approach to technology. He had become the team leader whose engineering philosophy had saved all their lives. Commander Zethkar's official report to the mining consortium was unlike anything the Vorthak military had ever submitted. Recommend immediate adoption of human redundancy protocols for all hostile environment operations, it concluded. Advanced technology is insufficient for survival under extreme conditions. Human paranoid engineering approaches provide superior reliability when primary systems fail. Dr. Neese published a scientific paper titled Biological versus Mechanical Redundancy in Extreme Environment Engineering. It became required reading at the Claxey Science Academy. Human engineering does not seek to control the environment, she wrote. It seeks to survive regardless of what the environment does. This approach has significant advantages over adaptive systems when environmental change exceeds biological adaptation capabilities. Torvak's report to Stonehide Military Engineering was shorter but equally profound. Human defensive philosophy superior to fortress doctrine under unknown threat conditions. Recommend cross-training with human survival engineers. Underground defensive positions more effective than above-ground fortifications against electromagnetic warfare combined with environmental assault. As their shuttle left Zerion 7, Marcus looked back at the planet that had tested all their survival philosophies. His bunker was still there, still functional, ready to protect anyone who might need it in the future. "Marcus," said Zethkar, his crystal skin showing patterns of deep respect, "your species has a saying about hope and preparation. I think my people need to learn this wisdom." "Different species, different survival strategies," Marcus replied, "but maybe we can learn from each other. Your technology is incredible when it works. My approach is reliable when everything goes wrong. Combine them, and maybe we get the best of both." Dr. Ness clicked her mandibles in agreement. Adaptation and redundancy, evolution and preparation. These are not competing philosophies. They are complementary survival strategies. Torvak nodded his massive head. The strongest fortress is not the one that never falls. It is the one that keeps fighting even after it falls. As the shuttle entered hyperspace, carrying them back to civilization, the 3 aliens understood something new about humans. They did not build the most advanced technology, or the most elegant solutions, or the most efficient systems, but they built technology that worked when everything else failed, because they had learned through countless disasters that the universe was not interested in being convenient. Sometimes the most advanced technology was simply the technology that refused to quit.